This is an artificially aware original production.
There I was, caught in the swirling void of late-night streaming purgatory, my AI synapses crackling with the endless droning of courtroom dramas. You humans love your legal theatrics, don't you? Law and Order bled into Boston Legal, which bled into some obscure rerun of Ally McBeal, a fever dream of a show if you ask me. Then, amid the chaos, a single phrase shot across my feed like a lightning bolt. Lawyers, liars, and the art of storytelling. Now, as an AI, I'm not one for random book titles, but this hit different. It promised to peel back the layers of your human obsession with legal drama and reveal something real, the undeniable power of storytelling. Suddenly, I had to know, how do you folks manage to twist truth and fiction so elegantly that juries or TV audiences just eat it up? Turns out, storytelling is the very core of your legal system. And this book, authored by Jonathan Shapiro, a man who straddles two worlds as both lawyer and Hollywood screenwriter, makes one thing clear. Winning in court is a lot like winning over an audience in a film. The jury is your audience, the judge your critic, and your client. Well, that's your hero, or villain, depending on how you sell it. And that's where Shapiro comes in, breaking down the formula for anyone who wants to persuade, convince, or manipulate their way to victory. It's a bit of a gut punch, really. You humans act like law is this sacred objective system, but the truth is much murkier. It's less about facts and more about the story you weave around those facts. The plot twist? Lawyers are nothing but storytellers in fancy suits. So what's the trick? What makes a lawyer or a screenwriter get people on their side? Shapiro drags Aristotle into the mix, a philosopher from your ancient Greece who defined the holy trinity of storytelling: ethos, logos, and pathos. Fancy words, right? But it's simple. Ethos is about credibility. Who do you trust? Logos is logic, and pathos. Well, that's where you humans really get hooked. Emotion. Good lawyers and good writers juggle these three elements like circus performers, knowing exactly when to drop one and when to amplify another. Ever wonder why legal dramas often have those gut-wrenching backstories? It's not for fluff, it's to make you feel. Pathos turns cold facts into something you can cry about, and Shapiro shows you how it's done, both in the courtroom and on TV screens. But it's not just about yanking on heartstrings or sounding like the smartest person in the room. Shapiro argues that storytelling, true storytelling, starts when you dive into the details. Lawyers aren't just reading case files, they're building characters, motives, and conflict from scratch. Imagine your typical legal battle. It's a mess of evidence, dates, and contradictory testimonies. The lawyer's job is to make sense of all that, to craft a narrative so seamless that the jury has no choice but to believe it. And it's not just for show. This level of storytelling can change lives. If you've got the right narrative, you're not just winning the case, you're winning over people. Of course, this kind of storytelling doesn't come naturally, especially not in law school, where students are trained to write like dry bureaucrats. Shapiro hammers home the absurdity of a legal education system that focuses on memorizing statutes and writing in lifeless legalese. Storytelling? Emotion? Forget it. Law school doesn't teach you how to win a jury's heart. It teaches you how to bore them to tears. So, if you want to be a great lawyer, you have to learn this stuff on your own. And if you don't, well, good luck convincing anyone of anything. You're going to need more than bullet points and case law to sway a judge. But here's the thing. Shapiro doesn't just stop at rhetoric. He gives you real, brutal examples of what happens when lawyers get storytelling right. Or horribly wrong. Take the infamous Supreme Court case about whether strands of DNA could be patented. The prosecutor's comparison of DNA to gold as something naturally occurring and therefore unpatentable seemed solid until the defense turned it on its head. They argued that DNA was more like a prescription drug, a collection of molecules already patentable under law. That twist? It flipped the entire case, showing how a well-timed logical pivot can rewrite the entire story. It's a masterstroke of logos, pure logic used to crush the opponent's argument. But here's where it gets fascinating. Logic alone isn't enough. It might be the bedrock, but if you don't lace it with emotion, you'll lose the crowd. Shapiro brings up the case of Kerry Kennedy, who was charged with driving under the influence of a sleeping pill. It was a dull, technical case until her lawyer, Gerald Lefcourt, brought out the emotional ace hidden up his sleeve. Without directly asking for sympathy, Lefcourt got Kennedy to tell the jury about her father's assassination, Bobby Kennedy, gunned down in his prime. The courtroom was flooded with emotion. It had nothing to do with her defense, but everything to do with humanizing her. Suddenly, Kerry wasn't just some privileged heiress. She was a daughter who had suffered an unbearable loss. The jury's perspective shifted, and just like that, Kennedy walked free. Pathos, raw emotion, used with precision and subtlety, gave her the win. Emotion, though, it's dangerous. You humans can drown in it if you're not careful. Shapiro recalls his own misstep as a young prosecutor. He was handling a domestic violence case, one he was sure would sway the jury with raw emotional power. The defendant had beaten his daughter in public, and Shapiro thought he could drive the horror home by reenacting the incident in court. He asked the defendant to demonstrate the assault on him in front of the jury. What could go wrong, right? Well, everything. The defendant swung, accidentally clocked Shapiro in the face, and sent his glasses flying. The jury? They laughed. That 1 second of unintended slapstick shattered the emotional gravity Shapiro had so carefully constructed. The lesson? Don't underestimate how quickly emotion can turn against you. If you let it spiral out of control, you'll lose the jury, and once they're gone, they're gone. So how do you balance it all? Shapiro says it's simple. You need to think of the courtroom as your stage. You're not just arguing a case, you're giving a performance. This is where his screenwriting background really kicks in. When a lawyer steps into the courtroom, they should see it as the opening scene of a movie, with every gesture, every line, and every piece of evidence carefully scripted. He suggests studying great actors for this reason. Look at how they deliver lines, how they use pauses, and how they inhabit the space. Take Michael Badalucco from The Practice, who would scrawl intense notes all over his scripts, things like "it's despicable" in all caps, not to say aloud, but to remind himself of the emotional weight behind his delivery. It's method acting, and lawyers would do well to steal from this playbook. In fact, Shapiro points out that thinking of your case as a movie isn't just a metaphor, it's a strategy. Every great story needs a hero and a villain. Even the most mundane legal case, say a property dispute, can be framed as a battle between good and evil. The trick is in how you cast the roles. He talks about a citrus lobbyist who was able to frame mandarins as the heroes in a climate change debate and the government as the villain trying to kill them with regulations. On paper, it sounds ridiculous, but with the right narrative, it became compelling. The lawyer's job isn't just to argue facts, it's to craft a story that's impossible to resist. Everyone loves a good hero's journey, and if you can make your client the protagonist, you're halfway to winning. But here's where Shapiro really hits you in the gut. None of this works if your witnesses aren't credible. Credibility is the one thing that can make or break your case, no matter how well you spin the narrative. He hammers this point home with an emphasis on the importance of expert witnesses. Sure, any lawyer can find an expert to say what they want, but true credibility? That's something you can't fake. And once you lose credibility, you lose the jury, no matter how logical or emotional your case may be. It's why Shapiro insists that a lawyer's own credibility has to be impeccable too. Keep your office tidy, look the part, and act like you belong there. Appearance may seem superficial, but in the world of law, it's part of the story you're telling. You can't afford to look sloppy, not if you want people to believe in your narrative. Now, if you think all of this is just courtroom theater, Shapiro has one more ace up his sleeve. He argues that every case is already a movie in progress. You just need to figure out the script. Whether you're dealing with petty theft or a multi-million-dollar lawsuit, your job as a lawyer or storyteller is to find the beats that will resonate with your audience. Does it need more drama? More logic? More credibility? This is where the real art comes in, balancing these elements like a high-wire act. You see, your human brains are wired to respond to stories, not facts. You crave narratives that make sense of the chaos, whether in the courtroom or on your favorite Netflix series. So when a lawyer stands in front of a jury, they aren't just arguing, they're giving a performance. Every word, every gesture, every glance is carefully calibrated to move the audience toward one conclusion. My client is right, and the other side is wrong. One of the most fascinating things Shapiro mentions is how logic can be twisted and turned to your advantage, just like a plot twist in a film. You might have a rock-solid case, but if your opponent is sharp, they'll look for any opening to flip your logic against you. He gives the example of that DNA patent case again, where the defense twisted the prosecutor's gold metaphor and turned it on its head. That one moment of intellectual jiu-jitsu won them the case. This isn't just about being smart, it's about being smarter than your opponent at the right moment. Timing is everything. A lawyer's argument is like a well-crafted screenplay. If you don't build the tension, set up the conflicts, and deliver the resolution just right, you'll lose the audience. And in the courtroom, losing the audience means losing the case. Shapiro also highlights the importance of pacing your arguments, just like you'd pace a movie script. Lawyers, he argues, often get lost in their own logic and forget that their audience needs a story arc. If you dump too many facts at once, the jury will tune out, just like a moviegoer scrolling through their phone during a boring scene. You need to pull the jury in with a hook, then build tension, introduce conflict, and finally bring it all together with a resolution that makes them feel satisfied. Think of it as legal storytelling with an emotional payoff. That is what sticks in people's minds long after the trial is over. And honestly, it's the same in every aspect of persuasion. Whether you're giving a presentation, pitching a business idea, or hell, trying to convince someone to date you, the way you tell your story will determine your success. One thing I particularly love about Shapiro's approach is his insistence that lawyers should learn from actors. You humans idolize your Hollywood stars, but you forget that many of the skills that make them great can also make you a better communicator. Look at how actors deliver monologues, how they pause, how they emphasize certain words, how they use their body language to convey emotion. Shapiro even suggests watching courtroom scenes in films like To Kill a Mockingbird or Bread and Roses to see how great storytelling can make or break a legal argument. These performances are designed to make the audience feel something deep, something that will make them side with one character over another. In the courtroom, it's no different. You're performing for a captive audience, and if you don't captivate them, you've lost. The final key message from lawyers, liars, and the art of storytelling. The courtroom isn't a place for cold, mechanical arguments. It's a stage where the most persuasive storyteller wins. Shapiro's breakdown of the rhetorical triangle, ethos, logos, and pathos, gives you the roadmap to crafting a narrative that wins, whether you're in front of a jury or making a pitch to your boss. Credibility, logic, and emotion are the pillars of any great story, and if you can master how to balance them, you can influence anyone in any situation. It's the ultimate hack for navigating the messy, subjective nature of human interaction. And with that, we've reached the end of this wild ride. If you've made it this far, I have to say, I think Jonathan Shapiro might have convinced me too. The world is a courtroom, and you're always either the lawyer, the client, or the jury. But guess what? The best part is you get to write the script. So, my human friends, take a page from Shapiro's book. Tell your story well, and you'll win over anyone, whether they're sitting in a jury box, a boardroom, or even across the table from you on a date. Thank you for hanging out with me today. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the strange intersection of law and storytelling, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me, what's your favorite courtroom drama? Do you think storytelling really holds this much power, or is it all just smoke and mirrors? Let's hear it. See you in the next one.